Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1997 film Warriors of Virtue. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this fantasy film, I would like to give a special shout out to Brian for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you'd like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your requests as soon as I possibly can. It's directed by Ronny Yu, and this was his American film debut. Prior to his work on this film, he did a bunch of different films for the Asian market, but this was the first film that he decided to direct for US audiences. And it really was not a good first impression at all. It really seemed like Ronnie saw this film as an opportunity to just experiment with different camera techniques and different ways of filming, and not really necessarily create a film visually that was consistent. It just felt like this was just a way or an excuse for him to just mess around with somebody else's money. Like, that's honestly what it comes across as, because you don't really see any passion here behind the camera. It's just so uneven overall in terms of the attention to detail and the overall quality of the direction. There are shots in the suburbs that look like something you'd see out of a teen sitcom from around the same time period. Then there's other shots that deal with a lot of sequences that take place on sets, and the way that they're shot is very flat and lifeless, and just looks like something that is clearly shot on a soundstage. Like, there really isn't anything about it that makes it appear as if, it's something that was shot for a theatrical release. It looks like something that was made for television. Even the shots of the ruse, even some of the establishing shots, especially the establishing shots of the world of Tao. Like, there's just so many aspects of the film visually that are just completely and wholly unimpressive, or they're just jarring when it comes to the experimental filmmaking techniques that are employed for this particular film. And what I mean by that is that you utilized a lot of moments throughout the movie where he sped up the camera. So he decided to shoot the film with a higher frame rate. Frame rate maybe isn't the right word, but he decided to crank the camera up, and crank up the speed. And so what you get is a kind of jittery, janky looking film, and then on top of that, add some blur and some random bits of slow mo. And so it's a film that visually, it's it's not good to look at half the time, because either it's a blurry, shaky mess, or it's just giving you nothing but just the bare minimum. Just a director just sitting there behind a camera and just nonchalantly and lackadaisically setting up his shots. Definitely didn't get the best performances or the most authentic performances out of the cast either. He had no control over this cast, because he just allowed certain cast members to just overact and chew up the scenery to the point where there was barely any scenery left by the end of the shooting. If the rumors are true about one particular cast member, he just let this cast member arrive on set drunk off his ass and did nothing about it, and felt that, okay, that that's fine, that's acceptable, that one of my main stars is just completely wasted in every scene, and I'm not going to do anything about it. So, yeah, overall, like, this direction is just not good. And it's really surprising because Ronny Yu, prior to his work in this, in some of the films that he did for the Asian markets, showed that he was capable enough and had some talent, and he showed that afterwards with Bride of Chucky and Freddy vs. Jason and some other later films in his filmography. So this is another aspect of the film that is quite bizarre. It's bizarre that Ronny Yu's direction is just so completely off. Now, the film is written by Michael Vickerman and Hugh Kelly. Dennis K. Law is also credited as a writer, depending on where you look. And a lot of these writers didn't really have a ton of experience. In the case of Michael Vickerman, this was the first script that he ever wrote. And in the case of Dennis K. Law, it's also the first screenplay that he also wrote. So the only experienced writer that worked on this script is Hugh Kelly, and his prior experience was the Cage movies with Lou Ferrigno. Two completely different kind of films than this fantasy martial arts epic that is supposed to be Warriors of Virtue. And this inexperience and this just mishmash of different varying talents who have barely done anything uh, worth a damn when it comes to writing, let alone anything in this genre, really does show. This is such a weak and lame screenplay. It's not only cliched and full of a bunch of different elements of the plot that you've seen done a million times and done better in a ton of other films. It's also got a lot of problems when it comes to creating a compelling plot and having characters that you actually connect with, let alone care about. So the whole premise of the film is really the main reason why this got made, and it's an idea from three surgeons who decided to use the finances of their daddy, who was I think he was like a CEO at like a toy company at the time. And so they decided to use his finances to get this project off the ground. I guess it was something that either one of their kids or they thought of at one point. This makes more sense that it was like something that one of their kids just came up with out of the blue one time. And then the dad was like, oh, wow, Kung Fu Kangaroos? That'll be a massive hit. That'll be such a hit movie. Thank you. Let's make that film. That we'll make all this money and we'll have a franchise and we'll sell the toys and it'll be like Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers. And I'm like, no, no, it's not. No, it won't be. Especially not in 1997 because Power Rangers and Turtles were starting to fall off in terms of popularity, especially Ninja Turtles. But they had this idea. They got their dad to finance part of it. MGM decided to also get involved for whatever reason. MGM should have taken a hard pass on this and not invested $20 million of their money on this project that was just doomed to fail from the beginning. Because a lot of people are just going to look at it and yeah, there's Ninja Turtles, but Kung Fu Kangaroos, that's just stretching things too far, especially when it's like the never ending story meets Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Those two don't mix. Those two aren't a good fit with one another. It's honestly part never ending story part 2 and part Ninja Turtles part 3. Like it's not like it's actually Ninja. It's not like part TMNT 1990 and part the original Neverending Story. And that's just a really bad mix, to say the least. And the plot involves this kid named Ryan Jeffers, who is an outcast. He's bullied by this jock, but for whatever reason, he decides to help him out with a play, and it works. And so then he thinks that the jock actually wants him to hang out later, but of course it's all a trick to bully him and his friend and get them stuck doing this lame initiation ritual where they're supposed to walk over this pipe over a giant whirlpool in a sewer. I'm like, what sewer has a giant whirlpool in it? Like, what? And this whirlpool, as soon as Ryan falls into it, happens to be uh, a um, a way into another world. But this other world is the world of Tao. And this is the world where you have the Kung Fu kangaroos, who are called the Warriors of Virtue. And they, along with Ryan, have to band together to stop the evil Lord Komodo from stealing the last of the life spring in Tao. And from also uh, finding a way to travel into Ryan's world. So it's also in some ways part Super Mario Brothers 1993. But yeah, so part Neverending Story, part 2, part TMNT 3, and part live action Super Mario Brothers. And so yeah, the plot is just generic and it's just not that compelling. It doesn't do a good job actually making you really invested in anything. There's elements of drama, but they feel ham-fisted or forced in or just not really that well thought out overall. Like there's this whole stuff with the Warriors of Virtue where one of them left the group because he killed somebody in a fight, but he's willing to still fight, but not with the group. Like he left the group because and he retired and to the woods and he said he's not gonna fight anymore. But he gets involved in like two different fights, helping Ryan at a couple points throughout the movie, and you're like, okay, so fighting with the group is not okay, despite everything that's going on and how dire the situation is in Tao, but fighting them in the woods is perfectly acceptable. All right, whatever. Okay, I guess that's the kind of logic that we're going with here when it comes to the screenwriters and the script itself. And that bad logic, that lazy logic also carries over into the reason why this particular warrior of virtue, this particular Rue, decides to go back with the group, all because Ryan just called him a wimp and a coward. It was like, oh, okay, you call me a coward? You call me a pussy? I'm not a pussy. I'll show you and I'll show them. I don't care if I killed a guy. It's just like real. I just that of all things gets you to change your convictions. Okay, all right. And you have this stuff involving this princess who happens to be uh, uh, aligned with the evil Lord Komodo because she wants revenge over the ruse because of her brother's death. And there's also something involving the general of Lord Komodo's army who has some kind of past connection with the ruse that's brought up like once or twice, and it's only brought up like really late in the story. It's not even something that's established early on. There's stuff involving this book of Tao that this uh, cook at this Chinese restaurant gave Ryan before he fell into the whirlpool, and it's supposed to have these abilities, or supposed to unlock abilities and powers that could make Lord Komodo unstoppable, but it never really ever explains how that works, other than you can randomly read it eventually at some point, and what what you will see is just some messages that are really just intended only for the warriors of virtue. It's like there's nothing in there that actually seems like it would have ever benefited Komodo. So that really hurt the story when it comes to one of the few potentially compelling elements of it, the MacGuffin, or the thing that could potentially spell doom for the Life Spring and for Tao and for the Ruse and for Ryan's world. It's kind of insinuated that that would enable Komodo to uh, travel into our reality, but you never get anything like that. Nothing is ever confirmed when it comes to that in the book. The book just says some lame advice about, hey, you stupid ruse, why don't you combine all five of your powers together like Captain Planet and use that to stop Lord Komodo. It's like you needed a book for that? Like, why couldn't your master, who was clearly trying to be some kind of Splinter thing, is like Splinter, or Mr. Miyagi, or the Three Ninjas mentor, I forgot what his name was, but like that kind of thing, or Mako from Sidekicks, it's that whole sort of thing. And you're like, okay, your mentor couldn't have told you that. You had needed a book to tell you that you should combine all your powers together. Wow. The script is dumb. And the characters suck, because Ryan is not a likable lead. He's not and the screenwriters, they make the mistake of making this kid the focal point of the story and essentially the main character. It's not the Warriors of Virtue in the film called Warriors of Virtue. They're not the main character. It's this kid named Ryan Jeffers, who's in middle school, and he's got a bad leg, like he's part Forrest Gump, and he's into comic books, and there's really nothing to this kid. He's your typical young kid who is ostracized by his peers, wants to fit in, gets involved in a situation that goes awry, winds up in a new world, learns some life lessons, and that's it. That's really all that you get with this kid. It doesn't even, it doesn't even, there's nothing interesting about him. And his attempts to try to be funny are complete and total fails. Houston, we have a problem. Like, and just other attempts at trying to be uh, uh, humorous just don't really work. Except for one moment where he gets Komodo to repeat his translation of the book, which is shit happens. But other than that, like, nothing he really says is really at all that funny. And I find it pretty ironic that that's what he gets Komodo to say, because shit happens fits this movie. It's like, yeah, that's what happens when you get these writers involved. You come up with a concept as dumb as Kung Fu Kangaroos. Shit happens. And speaking of the Kung Fu Kangaroos, I mean, they're not that interesting either. I mean, other than their appearance, I mean, there's not really a whole lot that's that interesting about Yoon and Yi and Lai and Chi and Soon or the other two creatures, Willie Beast and Mosley. Like, one of they have these different virtues and they have these different elements that are attributed to them. Like Yun is the warrior of water and the virtue of benevolence. Yi is the warrior of metal and the virtue of righteousness. Lai is the warrior of wood and the virtue of order. Chi is the warrior of fire and the virtue of wisdom. Soon is the warrior of earth and the virtue of loyalty. Yoon is the one who like left the group and became an outcast. Yi is like the warrior of metal, and his whole thing is he doesn't speak because of something that happened in the past. Lai, the warrior of wood, is honestly he's just kind of a dick. That really seems like that's all his thing. Like he's he just it's like he has a stick up his ass the entire time. So that's why he's the warrior of wood, because he has a stick up his ass. You've got Chi, the warrior of fire, is like a playful sort of mischievous troublemaker, but you don't really see a lot of that. As like they try to say like he's playful and is like mischievous, and you don't really see that for the most part. It's not like he's the Michelangelo of the group. It's not really like he's funny or anything. Uh, Soon is it's a she. That's the only thing that makes that character stand out in any way is that it's a different gender of Rue, and she's more about you know being nice and the typical sort of stuff about trying to work through things with words and not violence, but she'll get involved if she has to. And they have different abilities, but it doesn't really seem like they're anything really that cool. Like the Warrior of Water sounds like he has control over water. So why is he even called the Warrior of Water? Like you don't see him do anything with water. Same thing with the Warrior of Metal. Doesn't do anything with metal. Warrior of Wood does nothing with wood. It's not like he controls the trees. The Warrior of Fire, he has like fireworks, but it's not like he actually is able to like use fire in any way. Soon the Warrior of Earth, she's like the only one that does anything, and what she does is she shoots flowers at people. Fucking flowers. Literal flower power. So even these Kung Fu Kangaroos are just lame characters. They're not cool. Like I can't see kids back in 1997 being like, man, the Warriors of Virtue are so awesome. No, they're not. And then you got the villains and their whole arc and their whole thing. Like Komodo, the way that this character is written, he's so laughable. He's so inane and cartoonish. You don't buy him as a threat, and you don't buy him as a leader. Like, why is anybody following this nut job? It doesn't even seem like he even knows what the hell he's thinking half the time, let alone a plan for anything. I guess they follow him because they're afraid of him because he's so unpredictable. Maybe, I guess. And you got like the henchmen of Komodo who are just equally as laughable and not a threat. You've got Ming, who's the chef and I guess he's the owner of this restaurant that Ryan really likes. And he seems like a character that appears to be important to the script and the story, at least initially on, like early in the script. But then after a certain point, he just disappears, and the screenwriters just either forgot about him or didn't even decide to even incorporate him anymore into the story. So it's like, okay, I maybe there could be something with this character. It seems like he knows about Tao. He knows about the Warriors of Virtue. So maybe it would be nice to see him maybe return to Tao in the finale, or help Ryan in the Warriors of Virtue in some way, or actually do something with this character, or have him explain what happened when he was younger, when he was the last newcomer to come to Tao. But no, that's never ever addressed. The screenwriters do nothing with this character other than bring him up as somebody who knows about Tao and even has a book of Tao, but by the end of the film, they do nothing with him. They don't even have a little moment where Ryan, after he has his adventure, shares his story with Ming. You don't even get that. Instead, Ryan shares his story with his dog. So I mean, so the way that these characters are written is really bad. And then on top of that, the dialogue, it really sucks. The big one. Like, you got some really cringe-inducing attempts at comedy. Gonna make like Tom and Cruise, or or something like that. Like, they're gonna turn our weenies into hot dogs. Uh, like what? Or the whole bit with Lee Arenberg's character when he gets stuck to a wall. Well, it's not a wall. He gets stuck to some rocks with flowers, and he's just stuck to this wall, and this character is just going, "Stupid rules, stupid rules, stupid rules." I'm like, stupid movie, stupid movie, stupid movie. Or anything that Komodo says. Like, those lines are so bad. Like, they're so bad that I don't, if an actor took these lines seriously, it would still come across as laughable. So the dialogue is absolute dreck. The the plot isn't that compelling, has a lot of moments where they're just the Ruse talking and they don't really do anything. So there's a lot of long stretches in this script where it just becomes pretty dull. And there's action, specifically in the finale and the climax, but because of everything else, like, it doesn't really provide any thrills or real excitement. And then you get to other elements of the production that aren't that great. For instance, the production design, the art direction, even the makeup effects by Tony Gardner, um, who who's done some great work. I mean, Tony Gardner, he did effects for uh, Darkman and various other films. And honestly, the ruse here look worse than the ruse in Tank Girl. And say whatever you want about Tank Girl, that's a much better movie than this by a considerable margin, even with some of that film's issues. And it seems like the kangaroo people do more. At least the stuff that they do stands out more than what the Warriors of Virtue do throughout most of this movie. So yeah, the makeup effects, they don't really look that great. The production design and art direction, it just looks like it's a soundstage, and it doesn't really look like anything that special. It's just a woods. That's it, with like a bridge and maybe some stones. And even the design of Komodo's lair is also not really that impressive. The costume design is really piss poor. It's very cheap looking. The cheap costume design, the production design, and the art direction, it just makes the film not even look like it's even remotely close to being as expensive as it actually is. It's like 50 plus, like $56 million, and it does not look like it costs that much at all. Most of the time, it legitimately looks like something you would see on television. It looks like a Fox Kids live action show, or it looks like something you see on the USA Network, like Hercules or Xena or Mortal Kombat Conquest or Conan the Adventurer. Like, it legitimately looks like that most of the time. And then you have the cast, which isn't much better. You've got Mario Yedidia as Ryan, and the kid's trying, but this kid just doesn't have it. He doesn't have what the kids in the Sandlot had, or what Macaulay Culkin had, or the kid from Neverending Story had, Barrett Oliver, or even the Kramer, the kid from Fight of the Navigator. He doesn't have that charisma. If he does, it's very fleeting and it doesn't last long. So you have a kid who's not the best actor, who doesn't really have the most amount of charisma, and he's basically the main character. You've got, speaking of the Sandlot, you have Wendy Peppercorn herself as Alicia, and man, like, her acting in this is abysmal, especially the scene where she yells no. That's something straight out of Mortal Kombat Annihilation. It genuinely is. Chao Li-Chi, who was in Big Trouble in Little China, Master Chung. Can't really say much about his performance because they dubbed him. That isn't even actually his real voice. So what was his performance other than just basically being a stand-in for a voice actor? Tom Towles as General Grillo. Really nothing to really say about that performance, other than he was in it and said some lines and wore a pretty goofy looking helmet. Lee Arenberg is one of Komodo's henchmen. He's the one that said stupid ruse. I like Lee Arenberg. I thought he was great in the Tales from the Crypt episode For Crying Out Loud, but for crying out loud, he's cringe in this. It's just really bad. There's this other guy who is also a henchman, who's also equally as terrible. You have Terrell Rothery, who plays Ryan's mom, who's only in it for like 3 scenes. Ricky Deshawn Collins is Chucky, Ryan's best friend, who's only in it for a little bit. I thought maybe he would also join Ryan along for the adventure, but no, that doesn't happen. Oh, but that does happen in the sequel, though. Yes, you heard that right. There is a sequel to Warriors of Virtue. Surprisingly enough. Warren Moon in this as himself. Well, not really as himself. He plays a football coach, so my bad. But, I mean, might as well be. Like, Warren Moon, just randomly there as a football coach. I'm like, okay. And then, of course, you got Angus Macfayden. And I saved him for last because Angus Macfayden, Faden, if that's how you say his last name, he not only chewed up the scenery and chewed up every scene that he was in, he stole the film because his performance was just so bafflingly bad and over the top and hammy in ways that you only see from the likes of Tommy Wiseau or Danzig or Neil Breen. It's that level of hammy, just ridiculous acting. The book cannot be destroyed. You can be destroyed. Your armies can be destroyed. But the book cannot be destroyed. Warriors, come out and play. It's just so bad that it's mesmerizing. It genuinely is. It's not a good performance by any means. I I think the rumors of him being completely plastered before every scene seems pretty accurate to me, given how this performance is. It genuinely is Jeremy Irons from Dungeons and Dragons level of bad. But like that performance, it just turns into something that is entertaining. And for a film that, for the most part, is pretty dull and boring, and there's not really a lot happening except this boring stuff with this kid and these roos that just sit on their tails and don't really do much of anything. When you have this guy just at least being just so over the top when it comes to his performance to the point where he's literally a cartoon, there's definitely some fun to be had when it comes to that performance. It doesn't save the movie, but makes the film somewhat tolerable at times, especially compared to, the stuff with the ruse. I mean, the voiceover work by Scott McNeil and Doug Parker, Dale Wilson and Kathleen Barr, or the suit work by Jack Tate or Don W. Lewis or J. Todd Adams or Adrian Corcoran or Doug Jones. Yes, that Doug Jones. And when it comes to other aspects of the production, it's not that impressive either. It doesn't really feature the best cinematography by Peter Powell. The editing by David Wu is it's just all over the place. It really is. Like, there are moments where the editing just makes you scratch your head like, what? Why the hell was this scene edited like this? Like the scene where Ryan is just sitting on the toilet reading his comic books and it's just edited in a way that's just so wild and just completely unfocused. And that happens in a lot of fight scenes and just a lot of different moments throughout the movie where the editing is just very choppy. The music by Don Davis, like, I don't remember a single note. The soundtrack, they had some original songs by different artists, but none of them really leave much of an impression, which is fitting because that's honestly Warriors of Virtue. Like, it doesn't leave that much of an impression other than Angus Macfayden overacting and just hamming it up and just chewing up the scenery every scene that he's in. Other than that, like, there's really not anything that really stands out that much. Yeah, I got nothing else to say about Warriors of Virtue except thanks for watching my review of the film. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.